Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, ladies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted, episode 78. I am your host, Anna Osborne, and I am excited to be here with you all today on this beautiful fall day. It is raining outside, and it's cold, and it's stormy, and I'm just loving all of the just fall crispness in the air. And I'm actually recording at my office, which is where I prefer to record because it's usually quieter than my house. And I think I mentioned that I moved offices a few months ago, and I am now across the street from this beautiful park. It's this giant park that has these gorgeous trees. I'm on the second floor, and my office has these beautiful windows that overlook the park, and I get to see the rain falling today and the leaves falling off the trees. And I also have a lot more noise pollution. There is a man that has been outside working on some sort of leaf blowing, tree trimming project all day. And this is my last little window of time to be able to record. So we're just going to hopefully have faith to the podcast universe that it is not noisy. I've tested it a few times and you can't really hear it. The mic isn't picking it up too much. So I hope it is not annoying to the listeners. But the trade-off of this beautiful park is that there's a little bit more activity and a little bit more noise, which usually isn't a problem except when it is leaf blowing and tree trimming day. So that's what we got going on today. And I do have to say, I'm very impressed that he is out here. It's been raining all day. So who knows what he's working on, but that's what's going on. And as you all know, we are in the month of November, and we have a very fun topic going on this month all about advice. And so last week, we talked about this idea of advice. Do you follow it? Do you give it? Do you give it too much? Do you listen to it too much? Kind of where do you fall on that of advice spectrum? And so today I had the opportunity, well, actually this past week, of putting this question out to people, which is, what is the best and the worst advice you have ever received? And so today we get to talk about that. And I'm so excited. I am going to start with the bad because that's just what I like to do. I don't know about all of you, but I am an eat your broccoli first kind of gal. And so instead of talking about the best advice we have received, that'll be next week. This week, we're going to talk about the worst advice that you all have received and just kind of your feedback on it. Because advice is a funny thing. And we will be entering into, obviously, the holidays and the new year. And I just feel like there's so much advice that's given during this time of year. There's people that are hurting in great capacities, and people think they have advice on how to help them or make them feel less hurt around memories that are triggered around the holidays. And then we've got January where we're bombarded with messages and advice on how to eat and how to exercise and what to eat and what not to eat. And it just feels like this time of year in particular is tons of advice. So we're going to break it down and talk about it. Now, some of the worst advice that people shared with me, which I have to say is totally aligned with my worst advice, which is when we are told by somebody, that they're offering us guidance or direction that is totally misaligned with who we are. And I have to say that kind of encompasses bad advice to a T, right? That when somebody who has not walked in our shoes or who believes that their path is the best one out there gives us advice that is so misaligned for our lives, it just is absolute crap. I know that, as a mom with young kids, there are people that give advice about how they structure their day. And tell me, this is how I structure my day. You should really do the same. And I look at them like, you don't know me, right? You don't know what my mornings are like. You don't know how unrealistic it is for me to do X and have it cause less stress, right? I could do X and in fact, it would cause more stress. So I really love, this listener's advice or this listener's perspective on advice, saying that the worst advice that they've ever gotten is that anytime someone else is really projecting their own ideas onto them versus actually hearing and offering guidance that's aligned with their life and not the advice givers. And I think that is such a good contrast, right? That when we are needing advice or guidance, it really needs to be aligned with who we are. And the only way that we are going to be able to help somebody or support somebody is if we know them well enough to know what's aligned in their life. If somebody is telling me that their number one priority in life is to run 3 miles every single day, then why would I give them guidance on how to be able to balance their checkbook? Right? That's totally misaligned. And of course, that's a trivial example. But all the times we have people that are talking about their lives and what their priorities are, and you've got other people that are rushing in and giving them guidance or suggestions on something that is totally out of alignment of what they've just said their priorities are. So I love that this listener, what Nicole said, of being able to really talk about, it's got to be actually hearing and offering guidance that's aligned with my life and not yours. Okay. So that's one piece I think that is absolutely fantastic. The other piece of, feedback that I received from Lorena, which I loved also, was this kind of idea of grind, hustle, hustle, hustle. And for me personally, when somebody says, do whatever it takes, don't miss out on anything, take every opportunity that comes your way, it ends up where I am not slowing down enough to actually have any sort of wisdom about what's right for me, right? Like I'm moving so fast. I've become a human doing rather than a human being that I don't even know what opportunities are good ones. I don't even know what are the things that, I need to be doing, and really in such a fear mentality that I may miss out on something good. I've got to do it all. And so when Lorena shared this, I thought, yes, absolutely. When somebody is saying, do whatever it takes, pursue every opportunity that comes your way, or you may miss out, we aren't giving ourselves the ability to actually slow down. And there's so much wisdom that comes with slowing down. There's so much wisdom that comes with slowing down. And if we are in such a pursuit of do, we never get the opportunity to even know if these are good opportunities. And I think when it comes to life, so much about life is timing. And if something is not the right time, if your plate is so full and you are spinning so many plates and this thing enters into your life that feels like the absolute perfect opportunity, it has to align with all the other things going on in your life. There has to be a willingness to put down a certain number of things in order to take on something new. Otherwise, it's not the right opportunity. And I know for myself that there's definitely a mentality that I have had and viewed of this hustle grind mentality. And for me, it's really been about slowing down long enough to realize that I can't grind with any sort of indefiniteness, right? That there is a finite ability I have to just do. And, I shared about that last week of being able to take my own advice, which is to slow down when I need to slow down. And it makes my days look different. My to-do list looks a whole lot different on the days that I'm slowing down, but being able to really trust that continuing keeping an unrealistic pace for my life, for your life, for all of our lives is only going to result in us absolutely burning up and going down in flames. So I love that advice from Lorena. And so my addition to this is this idea of worst advice is really around a very similar idea, this hustle. But when I am looking at other people or giving myself advice or looking to people for advice, for wisdom that I'm not in alignment with. And so what I mean for that is we're always looking for, mentors, for people to be able to help support us, masterminds, those sorts of things. And, I had both Melissa Hall and Amber Hawley on a few months ago, and they were talking about this idea of mentors, masterminds, and mavens, and that there's all of those are different things. And I think that we're constantly looking for a place to bounce ideas, a place to get guidance, to get mentorship. And for me, what sets me up to get the worst advice is when I turn to people that aren't aligned with me. And you guys all know that for me, I don't believe different is, that we put the value on different. I don't believe that different is good or bad or right or wrong. We do that to different. And so if somebody is aligned differently than me, that's fantastic, right? That's awesome that they're aligned differently than me because they're doing them and I'm doing me. But why then am I looking to them for advice? And I think that piece really kind of comes into a personal accountability, that when I am looking to other people to help answer questions about me, what's really going on inside of me, that my barometer, my kind of little inner GPS is not ringing or going off in a way that allows me to slow down and really wonder whether or not I need to even be seeking advice. And so not only is there horrible advice out there, but there's also ways that we set ourselves up to receive that horrible advice by looking to people to guide us that we know do not have the capacity or the alignment with who we are to offer us anything of value. And for me, I kind of like that there is a level of ownership that we can have over who we are looking to guidance for. It's not like we're just this feather in the wind and we, whoever we bump up against changes our direction. That if we have more intentionality with which we make our decisions and who we go to for support, who we go for advice, do we end up being given advice when we've asked, right? Do we end up getting advice that actually ends up being something that really can help support us and move us forward and allow us to see something in a way that we didn't see it before? So that's kind of my 2 cents on bad advice. And I think that another piece that stands out for me too is this idea of that oftentimes bad advice is really just advice that wasn't prompted, right? Like, I didn't ask you your advice, so you giving it to me right now is automatically going to be put in the bucket of bad advice, right? And I think that piece is really, really true, that anytime somebody is offering advice and is unsolicited, it has not been asked for, it'll probably pretty quickly get put in the bucket of, yeah, this has no value to me. And so I really encourage folks that if they are wonderful advice givers, that they see that as a strength of theirs, to make sure that whoever they are giving this advice to, that it's been asked for, and that we're not just offering unsolicited advice and opinions on things that we have not been invited into that conversation. So for those of you that are wonderful advice givers, just have that on your radar to make sure that when you are offering support to somebody else, it really is being asked for, and ensuring that the form of support that they are asking for is really advice giving, not validation, not empathy, right? That they're really saying, hey, I really need your advice. Because oftentimes we try to be supportive and we give advice, but really what the person needs is some warmth and some comfort. And for those of you out there that have wonderful people in your life that are kind and loving and generous, and they also happen to be unsolicited advice givers, I've got 2 tips for you. One is being able to mentally prepare to be in those situations. If you're going to go hang out with so-and-so and they tend to be an advice giver, see if you can create a mental bubble for yourself where you're not just walking into situations where you're going to get really, really horrible advice. And the reason I say that one first is because oftentimes the second one, which is set the boundary, right? If you know somebody is really great at giving unsolicited advice, I do encourage you to set a boundary to say, hey, you know what? I need to talk to you about something. And what I really would like is no advice. I'd love for you just to kind of listen to me vent and tell me that you hear me. The reason I put that second is because sometimes we have to mentally prepare ourselves to even go into that interaction and to decide whether or not we're going to set a boundary. Because the truth is there's some relationships where we can't set a boundary that will be respectful around advice giving. Maybe we have a parent or a family member who's really great at giving advice, and we can't just tell them no. So instead, what we do is we create that kind of emotional or mental capacity to go into that interaction and creating a buffer or a layer so that when they give us that advice, we can kind of be like Teflon, knowing that we've mentally prepared ourselves for that. So it doesn't then have such a negative ramification where we end up getting angry or blowing up or saying something hurtful, that we're able to kind of keep it in perspective, recognizing this is them, they're trying to be helpful. They're trying their best, and me coming out guns a-blazing isn't going to be helpful at all. Okay, so those are really my 2 tips or my 2 pieces of encouragement. If you have somebody in your life who is great at giving unsolicited advice, kind of create that mental capacity to decide what you're going to do, if you're going to block it out, or kind of what you need to do to not integrate it in and have it tear you apart. And then secondly, once you've kind of made that decision, if it ends up being that you want to set a boundary, set a boundary. Set them up to succeed. Let them know what it is that you need in order to not feel unsupported. And although their advice is very kind and generous, it's not what you need right now. So that's our show on the worst advice out there. And I appreciate those listeners that shared. And I have a lot of you guys that reached out about good advice. So I've got lots of that to share next week. But I did just want to come on and just kind of, talk to you about this idea that most advice that is unsolicited fits into that category of bad advice. And especially advice that is out of alignment with who we are, or advice that tells us to go, 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 and not to slow down and pay attention to what's right for us. So thank you guys so much. I hope you all have a beautiful week. Thank you for letting me into your worlds and to your hearts. And I can't wait to see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna@herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.